I'm going to be making Claire Saffitz's carrot cake. I'm really excited about this recipe, but also kind of doubtful at the same time just because I don't really have that much experience with carrot cakes. I think I might have had 1 or 2 slices in my whole entire life, and I don't think they were good enough or bad enough for me to particularly remember what it tasted like. So I'm really excited to try this cake because it's from Claire's cookbook, so that basically guarantees that it's probably going to taste good. This cake is chock full of pecans as well as other interesting add-ins such as ginger and ground cloves. So it's definitely a super quirky, fun recipe, and I absolutely can't wait to try it.
Okay, so first off, we're going to be making the carrot cake. For this, you'll need some pecans, carrots, buttermilk, ginger, vanilla extract, flour, ground cinnamon, baking powder, salt, baking soda, ground cloves, ground ginger, eggs, granulated sugar, dark brown sugar, and a neutral oil. I use canola. So the first step is to roast the raw pecans. So I got a sheet pan and then I dumped out my pecans and spread them out evenly just to make sure that they don't burn in certain areas. Then I added those nuts to an oven and let that bake at 350 for about 5 to 8 minutes. Next up, I oiled my cake pans and added a layer of parchment paper at the bottom. This is to prevent any sticking. I repeated that process with the rest of the cake pans. And just a quick note, I did use 9-inch cake pans, but the recipe called for 8-inch, and that's why my cake was a little bit flatter. Next up, I grated my carrots on the coarse side of a box grater. So yeah, enjoy this montage of me grating my carrots. But anyways, after that, I added my carrots into a bowl, as well as my chilled buttermilk, some freshly ground ginger, and a few teaspoons of vanilla extract. Then using a spatula, I just mixed that all together until it was well combined, and then I let that sit, and the buttermilk will tenderize the carrots. Next up, got my roasted pecans, and I put about 1/3 of them into a Ziploc bag, then pressing out all the air, and then just beating them until you get a chunky texture. Repeating that with the other 2/3, but this time beating the pecans into a fine meal. Then adding in some all-purpose flour, as well as cinnamon, baking soda, baking powder, salt, ground ginger, ground cloves, and then whisking that all together. Now we're going to set that aside. For the next part, I actually used the paddle attachment, but you're supposed to use the whisk attachment. So we're going to add some eggs, granulated sugar, dark brown sugar, and then beating those together. And apparently the paddle worked as well, so that was nice. We're going to beat that until you get a nice and light colored mixture that falls off in a ribbon. Next up, we're going to slowly stream in our neutral oil. And then we're going to alternate with our dry ingredients, so adding 1/3 of the flour, and then adding in half of the carrots, and then adding in 1/3 of the flour again. So we're going to end with the dry ingredients. Oh, and by the way, if you're using the whisk attachment, switch to the paddle attachment when beating in the carrots and the flour. Once that's all combined, I added that into my cake pans, weighing out about 595 grams, but just because my carrots did not weigh the specified amount, I added a little less. Smoothing out the tops with a spatula, and then repeating that process with the remaining pans. Then we're going to let those bake at 350 for about 25 to 30 minutes, or until the centers are springy when touched. After about 20 minutes, I changed the positions of the cakes, and I also rotated them just a little bit. This is just to make sure that they do cook evenly. After the cakes were finished baking, I took them out and then ran a offset spatula around the edges just to loosen them up. Then I inverted them onto a cooling rack or sheet pan because I don't have enough cooling racks, removing the parchment as well. Next up, we're going to be making the brown butter cream cheese frosting. We're going to need some cream cheese, unsalted butter, powdered sugar, vanilla beans, and some salt. First, we're going to melt the butter in a small saucepan. And once that's all melted, we're going to swirl it around for about 5 minutes or until you get a nutty aroma and the butter begins to form little brown bits at the bottom of the pan. Preparing an ice bath and then adding in the brown butter and mixing that with a tiny spatula just until it's at room temperature. Don't be like me and mix it until it was hardened, because then I got butter bits in my frosting and that was not fun. So fair warning, the butter does continue to set up after you remove it, so just make sure that your butter mixture is a little bit more liquidy than you would like it to be. So adding in some room temperature cream cheese along with our butter into a stand mixer fitted with the paddle attachment and beating until combined. Then adding in our confectioner sugar, as well as the seeds of a vanilla bean. Then we're just going to beat the mixture until it gets nice and fluffy. This frosting is so delicious. I swear if you even get one bite of it, you'll never go back to the canned stuff. So next up, we are going to frost the cake. So the process is pretty simple. We're just going to add one layer of the cake and add some cream cheese frosting. Using an offset spatula, we're just going to spread that until it's all even, and then repeating this process with the 2 other layers. We're also going to be doing a crumb coat, so we're going to add some frosting on the sides of the cake, making sure that every single little crevice is covered. Running an offset spatula around the sides just to make sure everything is nice and even, and then letting that chill for about 10 minutes or until the frosting has hardened just a bit. Then we're going to add on some more frosting, and I actually used a little less than Claire just because I don't love frosting that much. And then I added on my chopped nuts. These were actually from earlier. They were supposed to go in the batter. Sorry, but I forgot, so I added them on top. They actually served as a pretty nice contrast to the cake. Then I removed my parchment strips, and then your cake is ready to serve. But of course, we have to take a slice out just for the camera. Wow, look at those layers. What a pretty cake.
My neighbor is currently playing some sweet, sweet French horn music, so if you hear really vibey jazz in the background, great. But this actually turned out surprisingly good. The last time I frosted a cake was probably in 6th grade. Let's just not talk about that. It was not fun. It did not turn out good. But I have definitely improved on my skills since then. Did my cake dome? Absolutely. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't. Looks pretty cute. Giving me very much pioneer woman vibes. I'm so sorry, Ree, I forgot your last name, but we are going to dig in. So I'm bringing out the wine glass, and my parents would kill me if I got buttercream on their wine glasses. So I'm gonna use a fork. Okay. Oh, I forgot to show you guys a close-up. Here it is. Can you? Okay. I'm praying that this is focusing. Serving all the angles, serving all the looks. Okay, I'm gonna dig in now. Wow, this cake totally exceeded my expectations. I'm surprised it turned out so tender. The texture is just so nice, like the cake kind of melts in your mouth just because it's so soft and tender, which I definitely did not expect with the carrots, but I guess the buttermilk really tenderized them a lot. I've never put buttermilk in a cake before and only in biscuits and waffles, so I genuinely didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I trusted the process and here we are. This cake was super delicious. I would rate it probably a 10 out of 10. If I'm being completely honest. This is my first perfect rating so far. I did cut down on the sugar a little bit just because I do that with most all recipes. And also just because I thought the sugar wouldn't affect the cake as much, and it was true because it turned out okay. I don't really have any critiques for this, just when making the brown butter frosting, make sure that your butter doesn't end up hardening too much because that's what happened with mine. And I got like tiny, tiny, tiny butter chunks in the buttercream, but it was only like a little bit, so it didn't affect me that much. But overall, this cake was amazing. It definitely surpassed all my expectations, and I really hope to make it again. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
I see